Hello, and welcome back to the Irish Tennis Updates podcast. My name is Adam, your host. This week I've been chatting to Wesley O'Brien. Wesley is a tennis coach from Ireland, and he also has set up a foundation called the Hit and Hope Foundation, Hit and Hope Tennis Foundation, where he visits refugee camps around Europe and runs tennis sessions for the kids who live in those refugee camps. Wesley is also heavily involved back in Ireland in with blind tennis and the Enjoy Tennis program. So in this chat, we talk all about Wesley's work, largely focusing on his work in refugee camps, how that came about, and the experiences and the standout moments he's had while on those trips. We also touch on his work with blind tennis, and he talks about how he encourage all coaches to get involved, both in Enjoy Tennis and also if they can in with bringing tennis to those who otherwise would not have access, like those living in refugee camps. I think it's really inspirational what Wesley has done and is continuing to do, and there's a lot to take from this episode. It's very very inspirational, motivational. So I hope you enjoy this chat. And without further ado, here is Wesley O'Brien.
All right, Wesley, a big thanks for coming on for a chat. How are things with you?
All good now, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
No, not at all. I'm looking forward to it. I just want to jump straight in, kind of maybe give people a bit of an idea of what you do. I know you recently ran a raffle and raised a bunch of money. So would you maybe just tell a little bit about what the raffle was for, what the money was for, and what was going on there?
Yeah, the raffle, it kind of started out a number of years ago when I started doing these trips to the refugee camps in 2018. And initially, the plan was I had taken about 3 trips to Ritsona refugee camp. And on my 3rd trip, I asked one of the managers in the camp, who was a girl from Kilkenny, actually Claire Campion, if the refugee camp actually had a defibrillator. Because I'd actually raised a bit of money for a defibrillator for my own club here in Killaloo. So I just asked simply, do you have a defibrillator? Because I would have thought like a refugee camp would be, it's crucial that they would have, a piece of equipment like that. And Claire would have said that they didn't have one at the time, that it was kind of a luxury, because, our funding is very tight and that the plan was to get one. So I kind of said, kind of leave it with me. And I look into it and see what I can do. So initially I came back and I started up a GoFundMe for the defibrillator. And then I decided to kind of reach out to a few, I suppose, tennis players and their foundations to see if I could get a little signed piece of memorabilia, to help with the cost of the defib. And it started with the very first item, which was the Rafa Nadal signed shirt. The Rafa Nadal Foundation came back and I told them my story, that I traveled to the refugee camps and I do the tennis with different camps and all that. And they said, no problem. Look, there's a signed shirt. Yeah. And I thought, I'm well on the way now. That's fantastic. I have, a bit of money through the GoFundMe. I have the signed items. And unfortunately then kind of COVID hit. This was around March of 2020. So everything kind of stopped. Everything kind of came to a complete halt, really. So it got to about the summertime of 2020. And like I said, I'd raised about half the money for the defibrillator through a GoFundMe. And the plan was always to auction or raffle the remaining items I had and raise the other half. But because it was taking so long and COVID, I just kind of decided to just put in half the money for the defib myself. So I paid the balance out of my own pocket just to kind of get it done and get it, because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was, when I'd be able to do it. But, I was delighted that I managed to get the defib for them. But I still had, here I was now, I'd gotten the money for the defib, but I still had the number of items, like the Rafa Nadal shirt. I managed to get a Usain Bolt shirt, a Lewis Hamilton thing. Someone just said, look, why don't you reach out to more people, more sports and more sports stars and more teams and see what they'll come back and say. So pretty much like 2 or 3 items turned into 25 items. The raffle, so the raffle we had recently, I linked in with a good friend of mine, Alwyn O'Toole, who runs the Access Tennis Foundation.
Yeah.
And basically what Ollie would do here in Ireland, I would do abroad. Like the Access Tennis Foundation brings tennis to disadvantaged and underprivileged here in Ireland, where I would do it, in the refugee camps abroad. So we raffled off 5 of the items. And like all the money raised now is going to go towards Alwyn's work here in Ireland. And, I will use the money to buy as many tennis rackets, as many tennis nets, as many tennis balls as I can, and, travel back to more and different refugee camps.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And obviously great that you could get some great prizes and raise some good money. And obviously you mentioned Alwyn and the work she's done. I have spoken to Alwyn before, so if anyone is listening and hasn't heard that, maybe they could check out to hear Alwyn's story as well. Which it's great you guys can work together on that kind of stuff.
Perfect,
and just kind of to get in a bit more to kind of the work you've done. Obviously you mentioned you've been out to those refugee camps a few times and done some work. So just to go back to the start of it, like what inspired you to do this, or how did they kind of really get started for you?
It really kind of started. I mean, it was like a number of years ago. There was a picture of, it would have been 2015. There was a very famous picture at the time. Like the refugee crisis would have been in the news a lot, and people trying to come across and get into Europe. But there was a very famous or an infamous picture of a young little boy called Alan Kurdi, who would have been a 3-year-old little Syrian boy that his family had made it from Syria into Turkey, and they were trying to cross from Turkey into Greece. And there was a little boy, his mother, and his 2 little brothers, and the boat actually capsized. So the very famous picture was actually of that, little boy had actually washed up on the beach. His body had washed up on the beach. It was really, a well-known picture, but it something like that really had got to me. I kind of felt from that moment on, if there was something that I could do, if there was something, any little thing at all. And I suppose like tennis seemed the obvious kind of choice, I suppose, that I can use.
Yeah, no, because obviously a lot of people would have seen that picture and would have been touched by it, but obviously fair play to you for then really going out and doing something about it. So yeah, kind of, I guess that's where the maybe the motivation came for you. Then how did you start? How did you get started? How did you kind of go about actually getting out to some refugee camps?
It would have been like 2018, the summer of 2018, that I decided, look, I run summer camps here in Ireland. I work with kids a lot. I love working with kids. So I reached out to a couple of NGOs and kind of non-profits in Greece primarily, who would be working in the refugee camps, and just said, look, I'm a tennis coach here from Ireland. I don't know how you would feel about this, but how would you feel about me coming down to your camp that you're involved with and doing a bit of a tennis camp with the kids? Because I was so used, I kind of do it in schools here in Ireland as well. And in schools, I bring the tennis nets, I bring the rackets, I bring the tennis balls, and I set them up in the schools. And it kind of grew from that. I said, why can't I do this in one of the refugee camps? So one camp came back to me, Lighthouse Relief, who's based in Ritsona refugee camp, and they were kind of come back to me kind of quizzical, because it had never been done before. I mean, I don't, something like this has never really been done before, like let alone with tennis. So, once we worked out all the kind of logistics and, how we can do this and what am I bringing and all that, I would have traveled down for my first trip in November 2018 for a week.
Okay.
They normally like people to stay for like 3 weeks, but seeing as I was doing a kind of a workshop and I was kind of limited with my own work here in Ireland, they said, look, why don't you come down for a week, bring all the tennis gear, all the tennis nets, and try it for a week. And it just blew me away. And, the amount of kids that got involved was amazing for that week.
Yeah, great. And how would that experience of being there compared to what you would have expected, or kind of images you might have had of what the camp would be like before you went?
I didn't, people have asked me that before. I never really had an idea of, what it was going to be like. I kind of went into kind of kid mode. You know, they were the same as, it was kind of the same as working with kids here in Ireland. You know, kids are kids and kids just want to have fun. You know, I never thought, you know, what is this going to be like for me? What is this going to, how is this going to be different for me? How do I have to behave a certain way? It was never that kind of a sense of a thing. I just kind of thought, you know, kids are kids. I just go into kid mode. You know, they're the very same as kids. I treat them exactly the same as kids here in Ireland, which I love working with kids. And, you know, I think that helped me. You know, I didn't have this preconception of, oh, what, you know, they're kind of different kids or they're different people. I need to behave a certain way. No, it was kind of a camp as a camp. You know, the same as a tennis camp here. You know, let's go in, bring some tennis crib, bring some of the tennis equipment. I lacked silly for the younger kids, as I would do here in Ireland, and you know, they just loved it.
Yeah, well, that obviously the first time was successful for you. So then you did get. So how quickly then did you kind of plan to maybe get back again? I know you have been back since. So how did that go after that first trip?
Yeah, it was. You know, it was for a week initially, and you know, I've said it before many times that, you know, I always look at it like I'm glad I went for a week, but I'm sorry I went for a week. You know, I'm glad I went because I did it and it was amazing, but I'm sorry I went for a week in the sense of it was only for a week initially.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like heartbroken coming home. So it was always the plan to go back. So literally 6 weeks later in January, 6 weeks after my first trip, I went back out again. And I managed to get 2 little portable tennis nets.
Right.
That I brought with me this time. And this time in January 2019, so 6 weeks later, I spent a longer period there. So I spent about 4 weeks.
Okay, yeah.
There kind of that time. And again, I came home and keeping in touch and all that. And January 2020 now was the last time I was in Arizona.
Yeah.
Just before COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I was there for a third trip in January 2020. You know, and it kind of came from there. It was always after my third trip, I said, you know, why not kind of grow this? Why not make this, you know, why not travel to more refugee camps in more countries and do the same again, bring the tennis equipment and bring all the balls. But COVID kind of knocked everyone sideways. So for a year and 6 months, everything kind of, you know, stopped for me, you know, like, and the trips and everything else. But I was lucky enough to get in contact with another NGO called Strong Gens, who run a school for Afghan refugees in Athens.
Okay.
So I managed to travel out to them finally I got back out to Greece in September 2021. So they're only like 4 months ago. So I started the tennis project with them as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was that one? Was it similar in experience to the previous ones you'd had, or how
similar experience, smaller kind of groups of people I was dealing with, and that wouldn't have been based in a refugee camp. They kind of run a school in the center of Athens, so that would have been a case of literally I found a public park about 10 minutes away from the school.
Okay.
So I would arrive up at about 5 o'clock every day to the school, and all the kids would just they'd pick 10 rackets each or want to be carrying the nets, and we'd all walk down to the public park and just set up the tennis equipment and off we go. Like, you know, that was an amazing experience as well.
Yeah. So now you found it kind of you've called it now Hidden Hope Tennis. So is that kind of, have you done that quite recently, or was that from the very start? Was that what you were calling it, or
that was only, I'd say, within the last since kind of lockdown.
Okay.
Someone suggested, you know, it's brilliant what you're doing, Wesley, but it would be great to kind of give it a kind of a title and give it a kind of a name.
Yeah. You
know, because if you're doing a bit of fundraising, you know, Wesley O'Brien, tennis coach, you know, okay, he's a tennis coach, but, you know, it just kind of rounded it off a little bit. You know, I thought Hidden Hope was a nice little name for it, a nice little ring to it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so are there any other people that are working with you on this, or is it still kind of just yourself?
It's just me. It's just me.
And do you have ambitions to grow it in terms of more people, or how do you see it going?
No, I'm kind of happy enough, you know, kind of plodding along with myself, because you know, I do all this in my spare time. Like I coach here in Killuban Tennis Club. So like whenever I get the chance, it's people have been very good in helping me with kind of rackets and balls and things like that. But I'm really happy plodding along on my own. I'm hoping now to go to Turkey in March next year with an NGO called KEP Team, so KEP Team. And they run a center in Izmir and Athens for refugee women and girls. So it's kind of a safe house for refugee women and girls. So there'd be no male, refugees involved with that. So, I'm looking forward to that. They seem very enthusiastic about starting a bit of tennis as well. So, it's really about just, giving a bit of hope and giving a bit of normality.
Yeah.
And I'm, absolutely, I want to, travel to as many countries and just do the same again. And, I find it like any equipment that I bring with me, like the tennis nets and the balls and the rackets, they're all left with the NGOs.
Right.
So wherever I go, whichever camp I go to, they can keep the equipment and they can keep the rackets and the balls so they can keep it going, hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. I guess that is a great thing, that even, you're only there for a few weeks, but it can be something that they can keep, obviously, when for the rest of it. So your kind of plans are just going to keep reaching out to more places, try to go as many different camps as you can and different experiences, and keep trying to go to different places, bring tennis to as many places as you can. That's kind of the story for you now.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of these kids and residents, obviously, I mean, they would have never have had the opportunity to kind of play tennis, but it's always one of those things. I mean, you see a lot of kids, like in Rizona now, when I went first, you'd have 5-year-old little kids, that would be coming up, and they'd be from, Syria or Iraq or whatever, and you put this little tennis racket in their hand and you give them a ball, and it's fairly self-explanatory. I mean, they know what to do, even though they've never seen tennis or they've never experienced tennis. They work it out. Okay, hit the ball with the thing. So it's very good there with universal.
Yes, of course. And so are there any kind of, from any of those trips you've had so far, are there any kind of moments that stand out or make you kind of keep wanting to come back and do it again? Any kind of moments that really kind of stand out to you?
Oh, I mean, there's plenty of little stories that you have along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, like the residents in these camps are literally the most amazing people. I mean, they're really, really like lovely people and considerate people. Like I told the story before recently of, the little boy in my very first trip to Rizona. There was a little boy, beautiful little kid, blonde hair, blue eyes. Like he was the most gorgeous little kid you'll ever see in your life. And I was finishing up for the day, like the camp was over. I was picking up all the tennis equipment, and usually like here in Ireland, when you're tidying up, the kids like scarper. It's like, pick up the balls. No, I gotta go. But there was this one little boy, about 5 or 6, and he was like, as I was taking down one of the nets, he was going around and he was picking up all the cones for me. He was collecting all the cones and all the balls, and I didn't ask him to do it. Like, I didn't.
Yeah.
But he was going around and he was doing it. And it was then, like, it was near the end of the day, and he picked up all the coins and he walked up and he'd given it to me. And he kind of, a lot of the people did giving me the name, because Wesley, they couldn't get their head around the name Wesley. They couldn't pronounce Wesley.
Yeah.
So I became known as Wes Ali very quickly.
Okay.
So that was my name. So he came up and he gave me the coins and he said Wes Ali, and he gave me the coins.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. So I, there was no one around, so I gave him a tennis racket and I said, look, go over there now to the other side of the net and I'll have a little bit of a hit with you. Biggest smile came on his face. Biggest smile. His eyes lit up because it was just me and him. And he loved a bit of attention, like. So we were hitting away and all that, and then 2 parents or 2 people would have come over from the residential area, because where I was kind of doing the tennis, it was separate to the residential area. So they came over, and one of them got out a little phone and was filming. The little boy hitting the hitting the ball. So obviously, common sense worked in my head. These are the little boys' parents. So I just asked them, are you these little boys' mum and dad? Is that your little boy? And in kind of broken English, they were saying, yes, 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 a big smile on their face too. And I just kind of said to them, I want you to know you have one very, very good little boy there. And I explained how he went around and he picked up all the balls for me and all the cones. And I could see the dad getting a little bit kind of choked up by that, kind of a strange way. I think it kind of meant a lot for someone else to kind of, especially a stranger, I suppose, to kind of say, your little boy is very good. He's a very, very good little boy, because, most parents that I've spoken to in that environment, all they care about is their kids, like, their kids are their number one priority. And I suppose, like, they're all kind of uncertain. They don't know what's going to happen to themselves, let alone their kids, like. And I think for someone to say, your little boy is very good, I think they kind of took it as a compliment for themselves too.
Yeah.
That they're doing a good job, like, despite the circumstances they're in, they're doing a good job. So it's little stories like that kind of keeps you going, and, it kind of keeps you moving back, and, it's...
No, it's a lovely story. And it's it is very moving story. And I'm sure that you have loads of those. This are like the experiences you'd have. I can only kind of imagine how much you must take away from them.
You always, it's, I get as much out of it as they do. I love the fact that, you're doing a little bit, it's not a huge amount, that you're doing, but it's, there was one other story, and I think there were these two little girls. They were about 9 or 10 years of age, and they were like identical twins, identical, like, even down to what the same height, to what they wore. They were identical twins. Now, I didn't know they were identical twins until later on.
Yeah.
But I was hitting with one of them over the net and playing away, whatever. And then the girl that I was playing with, she hit the tennis ball over my head. So I had to turn around and go and get it. But when I turned around, there was the other twin wearing the same clothes. And I looked around, and I looked again, and I looked around, and they could see the look of shock in my face. Like, how did you get from there to there? And then they just started laughing, the two of them, because I didn't know they were identical twins.
Yeah.
But they realized that I was looking, and I was looking, how did you get from there to over there so quickly? And then the penny dropped in, you're identical twins.
That's great.
But they had a great time out of that. Like, they had great fun with me over that. Like,
that's brilliant. Now tell me, so obviously when you're over at the camps, you have a few hours, however many hours a day you do of the tennis. So how's the rest of your time? If you're there for a month, like, how are you, like, are you for your food, your kind of accommodation, like how's the rest of the experience for you?
It's usually we would arrive, like, with Zona now, we generally arrived, like, all the staff, all the residents, all the people working there and volunteers, they would arrive at about 11 o'clock. And they would open up, because with Lighthouse Relief now, how it works is that they have kind of two kind of separate areas. What Lighthouse Relief do basically is they kind of run kind of activities and kind of a hangout area in the camp. So they would have the Yes Space, which is the youth engagement space. And that's basically for residents of the camp to come. They'd be like, 15 years of age upwards. They can come and they can drink tea and just hang out and play some table tennis. And then there'd be the child-friendly space, which would be for kids from 3 up to 8, I suppose, like the real small kids. So pretty much I would be somewhere in the middle. So I would generally start tennis at about 1 o'clock. So when I arrive in the camp, I would just kind of help out, setting up the tennis table or getting water, whatever. And then from 1 o'clock, I would generally go down to a little court area and set up the tennis. And from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I'm doing tennis constantly. So, and then people are coming and coming and coming and coming, and they join in and they join in. But yeah, like the accommodation we would live in and all that, that would be separate to the refugee camp. So I wouldn't be obviously staying in the refugee camp. I'd be living generally in the nearest town or in Athens, and then I would travel to the camp every day.
Okay. Yeah. And just a kind of another quick question on all this is, so how, if people want to kind of find out more about it or kind of help out, obviously you have your GoFundMe and stuff for getting involved. Where would you point people for information or helping out?
Yeah, well, I have my own Facebook page. It's a Hit and Hope Tennis Coach.
Okay.
So, like any information about myself or what I'm doing, I still have some sports memorabilia that I love to, move on at some stage and kind of fundraise from that. I mean, some of the stuff I've been blown away by the support. I mean, people a lot bigger than me and in a lot bigger jobs than me, have been donating. Like, I mean, Manchester United got involved with a signed shirt. The South African rugby team,
right.
All the 4 provinces. It's been like insane. It's been insane. The support I've gotten. But yeah, I have my own Facebook, Hit and Hope Tennis Coach, and information, for myself is on that page. But even anyone listening today, I would recommend that anyone, this isn't, it's not about tennis. Tennis is part of it, but it's not about, tennis. Tennis is great to use, but it's about bringing a bit of hope. And, if there's any basketball coaches out there or soccer coaches or rugby coaches or whatever, get a bag of rugby balls, get a bag of basketballs and go out and do it. I mean, you can make a basketball hoop very easily. I mean, the first time I was over in Ritsona, we made this makeshift tennis net because I didn't bring a tennis net the first time I went over. So it was like 2 big blocks and a wood thing and this old.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the greatest. It was useless, but it done the job. Like it done the job until I got out there with proper nets. But this is something that anyone can do. Yeah. Basketball coaches, soccer coaches, Irish dancing teachers. Something that you can. It's amazing what you can do if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, no, incredible. Like it is just amazing to hear kind of what you have done, and obviously that it is something that makes a difference, and a whole host of people can kind of do something similar. So obviously it's a great message to hear from you. Bringing
your own skill, whatever skill set you have, like it's just amazing.
Oh, fantastic. And just a couple of other kind of points, Wesley, before we finish up. I know that you've also worked kind of back here in Ireland. You've worked a good bit in blind tennis and maybe some other bits of enjoy tennis. So just to tell me a little bit. I know you've even worked with the Irish World Championship team for the blind tennis. Tell me a bit about your work in blind tennis or enjoy tennis and other kind of areas of tennis as well.
Yeah, that's one side of the game that I really love as well. I mean, that's a big passionate side of mine, working with the enjoy tennis, working with the blind tennis. I got involved with the blind tennis. I went to a conference in Bulgaria, the World Coaches Conference in Bulgaria in 2017, and they were giving a demonstration. 2 Spanish lads were giving a demonstration on blind tennis, and I thought this is something that I have to get involved with when I come back home. Yeah. So when I got back, I reached out to Liam O'Donoghue, who's in Shankill Tennis Club, who's like an amazing guy with like there would be no enjoy tennis, there'd be no blind tennis without Liam. So I got in touch with him and I just said, look, how can I get involved? So a lot of the work that I did previously would have been in Shankill Tennis Club in Dublin. So I would have travelled up to Killaloe and got involved there. And then, like you said, I was lucky enough to get involved with the Irish team through that. But more recently now, I've set up a Midwest blind tennis program, which covers like Clare, Limerick, and Tipperary.
Right.
We had two taster sessions there before Christmas that were well supported. We had like 4 adults and 3 kids, which which was good for a taster session. And the plan is now to run a more longer running program now in the new year. So February time.
Yeah, great. So how do those run? Like, do you find people that kind of obviously it's enjoyed by people, and like how do you then like how do you kind of feel that all the sessions work, and kind of from your point of view as well?
I know they kind of work well. There's always a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of apprehension. When someone comes to the door, like blind tennis, they're like and I mean that's the first thing I asked them. When we all got together on day one, we all introduced ourselves, and I introduced myself, and I just wanted everyone to give a quick thought on get everyone what they thought when they heard blind tennis. First.
Yeah.
Everyone is like, okay, they have to come and try this. They don't know more, like they don't know much about it. It's just literally about making it as fun and as enjoyable, regardless of whether you're doing it for kids or whether you're doing it for adults. It's making it as fun and as enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like we had one lady now who was legally blind, so she would be in the B1 category.
Yeah.
And with that lady, it was just simple about, I don't care if I have to stand within 1 foot of her. She is going to hit the ball on day one.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing, is that she hits the ball and she makes contact with the ball. And a lot of people have said that, with the guys I've worked in Dublin now, they've said that's what brings them back.
It's that feeling.
I mean, like I got the biggest buzz. Like when that lady made contact with the ball for the first time, I moved back a little bit and I said, okay, the ball's going to come to your left-hand side.
Yeah.
And she hit the ball. She got the biggest buzz out of it. I got the biggest buzz out of it. Her husband, who was sitting down watching, he got the biggest buzz out of it. And it's that kind of thing that, that's brilliant. That's
absolutely.
That's fantastic. So, it's about getting as much, them getting as much out of it as they can.
And then you mentioned maybe kind of apprehension on the part of the players, and I'm sure that a lot of any kind of coaches that aren't involved in blind tennis may feel some apprehension as well, might be a bit kind of intimidated by it. So like, what would you say to coaches who might be a little bit nervous about trying this kind of very different to their normal job, about what kind of advice for them to get involved?
It's just do it. Just get out there and just, I mean, like the first time I done it, I was a bit like, well, I mean, I wouldn't say I mean, this is something that I think coaches should be excited about.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can understand a little bit of anxiety from a coach as well, but like when I was going up to Dublin, it was more excitement that pushed me on. Like the whole excitement of it overturned the bit of anxiety I had.
Yeah.
So it's something. Just do it and get excited about it, and you're going to get such a kick out of it, and it's just an amazing feeling.
Yeah. No, I was speaking just yesterday to Stuart Hampton, who is obviously is one of our top players, and obviously in the B1 category, as you mentioned. So if anyone is, again, just to hear his story, kind of obviously this is your side of it as a coach, and then to hear his side of it as one of the top players was incredible.
Like Stuart is. I mean, yourself now, Stuart is not only one of our best players, but Stuart is now one of the world's best players.
Yeah.
In the B1 category. I mean, that's fact now. I mean, Stuart is absolutely amazing. I mean, the love and passion that Stuart puts into it is insane. I mean, Stuart would be a professional tennis player if he could. Like he'd give up everything, to do that full time. He loves it that much. Yeah. And that's what makes him the player he is, because he loves it so much and he's passionate about it, and he is one of the world's best players now. So
brilliant. So there you go. So if you're listening to this, have a listen to that one as well for sure. I'd definitely just to hear his story, and you've just heard how great he is there. So definitely listen to that as well. Now just Wesley, before we finish up, obviously we've talked about some nice and different sides of coaching. Like as you say, you kind of have your more regular day job of coaching, and then you obviously have all these bits of coaching which just kind of add to it all. So like, what advice do you have for maybe coaches, or how to get into coaching and maybe get into these different aspects of tennis coaching?
I just think it's reach out to as many. I mean, look, coaching is coaching. I love helping as many people as you can. I mean, it kind of breaks up. The day-to-day coaching is fantastic, and it's what we do. But I really find, branching out into other little activities and other sides of coaching, helps me day to day as well.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
it's just,
Yeah.
Put as many strings in your bow as you can, and you're going to get a lot out of it, and you're going to get, a huge amount out of it as well. So, just do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final question, Wesley. What's your favorite thing about tennis?
My favorite thing about tennis is, put me on the spot now. It has really been, and I know we've spoken about it, it has really been like the work I'm doing in the refugee camps. The fact that I can really see that what I'm doing as a tennis coach and what tennis can bring to people who really kind of need it.
Yeah.
It's how it can really make a difference in someone's life that really kind of needs it.
Yeah. No, Wesley. Yeah. No, I really appreciate your time and coming on and obviously telling all those stories and all about the work you've done. And hopefully people that do listen to this I'm sure they will take a lot from that and kind of the experiences that you've spoken about. So I really appreciate your time. It's kind of inspirational what you've done and hopefully will inspire others, I'm sure. So a big thanks. And all the best with, hopefully, as you say, hopefully getting out before too long as much as you can, getting out there and more trips and keep it going. But well done. Big thanks.
Big thanks once again to Wesley for his time with this episode and for sharing all the stories that he did. As I said at the start, I think it's really just inspirational what Wesley has done, and to hear all about the work he's done and how he's raised funds and brought these experiences to all these people who otherwise would not have any access to a sport like tennis. So do feel free to check out Wesley's page that he mentioned on Facebook, Hidden Hope Tennis Coach, and to get involved in any way that you can. A big thanks for listening to this episode. I hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, please do consider liking it, leaving a review, and subscribing to the show so you don't miss another episode. Until next time, thanks for listening. I've been Alan, and goodbye.